Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of WeekCap. I'm your host, Clady, the one and only, with my sidekick, Greer Webb. How you doing today, Mr. Greer?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, just like yourself. But we have a whole lot to unpack over this past week and a half now. We were a little delayed and such because of our schedules and all, but a whole lot to go over, indeed.
Yeah, it's been a busy week and a half, and I know I've been traveling. I know you've been booked and busy, so I'm excited that we're back together now for week cap and able to talk to the people about everything that's been going on.
Yep, so let's just jump right on into it because this has been a topic that we've been exploring and covering for the last few weeks or so now. The airplanes again. Every time you think that we're gonna have a airplane free incident week or airplane incident free week. Here comes another one. And there are times I'm wondering if they're old stories rehashing or if it's a remix of the same story, but it turns out it's a new one. It's almost like you just hope it's an Onion article or an Onion video or something like that. Did you see the one where there was I think there was two since we last did this we did our last show. There was one where smoke came into the plane from a flight from it was either Columbia or Atlanta, and then there was a near miss at Midway's airport from a flight over there through Southwest and all of that. And there's probably another one that I'm missing in the past 10 days. If there's one that sticks out, feel free because I that's kind of the problem here is that it's now to a point now where you go, oh yeah, that plane incident. That's exactly the
Right.
problem right there in itself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there have been at least two since we chatted last time, and it is exhausting to even talk about them, but as you and I have mentioned, something has to be done. And that's why we are really passionate about this Safe Skies effort to make sure that people are able to travel specifically by plane safely. And so I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's a little bit of both. We're talking more about this issue because there has been an increase in incidents recently, but I still think we're seeing more and more of these near misses, as you mentioned in Chicago, the smoke that filled up the plane. I believe it was a plane that departed from Atlanta. So what's going on and what can we do to address and fix this issue? Those seem to be the two questions, and I'm just not sure what the Department of Transportation is doing about this. So definitely encourage everyone to reach out to your elected officials, specifically at the federal level, and let them know that something needs to be done because we don't want to keep talking about this. And we certainly don't want any loss of life to continue to occur because of plane crashes.
Yeah, and speaking of Safe Skies, we'll talk more about that again a little later on about our Safe Skies initiative that we talked about in our last show or two and all. But I'm going to continue to put more information on social media and tag Greer to that and such. But I just thought about that other third incident. The third incident was the one Delta flight. I'm not sure if we covered this the last time, but I'm almost certain we almost didn't because that's there has been about 10 days, 10 or 11 days in between since we last met. But there was one incident where a plane was about to land in I think it was it was in Toronto. The flight had originated from Minneapolis. And when it landed, it flipped right over, caught on fire, and it flipped right over and the passengers were hanging upside down like bats, according to one guest on the flight, one
Wow.
passenger, excuse me, and they were indeed they were all safe. I think they were well safe as far as no loss of life, but there were some injuries that were reported. One gentleman came on social media and said that he had a big headache and his neck was in a cast. Um, but Delta's immediate reaction was to pay out $30,000 to each passenger, saying that they could still sue them if they wish to, but this is a we're sorry gift. And a lot of people on social media took that to kind of reacted saying you get 30,000 for a car accidents or crashes or whatever the case may be. It should be at least 1K for airlines. Um, I mean, there's there's no way to really quantify that type of experience. So we're not, we hope
Right.
nobody ever has to, let's just be honest. But just for someone who's been in a car wreck himself, I could just imagine what that situation would be like because you and I are both flying this weekend. You're going to New York, as you discussed before. I hit the record button, and I'm going to Los Angeles, and we're not really going to slow down. We kind of did to start the year out, but you know, we're we're not just going to keep sitting idly by, but we want our transportation in the skies to be safe, friendly, and incident free. That's just a simple fact of the matter. Just what are your thoughts on this particular incident that I just referenced and just, kind of tying it all in together, Greer?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't want to miss any of the incidents, and I had forgotten about that one personally. But yes, that was super scary just to see that plane because the video emerged later coming in, landing at that airport in Toronto, and then flipping over and having passengers hang upside down. And thankfully, everyone survived, to my understanding. But very scary. I do think they're owed a lot of money. I think it's a very traumatic experience, as you mentioned, and it's something that's going to stick with them. And so, I guess from the legal perspective, it's going to be interesting to see what the legal remedies are for all of these plane incidents, and especially for those that where people survive, but they're still very traumatized. What is that figure going to look like? So I guess it's in a way personal injury, just at a larger or higher level. And so, what does that look like in the legal space is something I'm looking out for. But then also. Um, with this Toronto incident, it was just very strange to me because obviously Toronto, we're talking about Canada here. There was snow on the ground there at the airport, but you think they know how to deal with this kind of thing. And so to see that plane go like that, I don't know if it was pilot error. I don't know if there was ice on that specific runway, but anyway, or either way, there was still some sort of negligence going on. I feel like either by the pilots or maybe by the airport or airport officials because planes don't just do that on their own. And so, how does that factor into the settlement that some of these people may request? And so, putting it all together, I think that there's a super necessity. There's a big necessity for us to really investigate and regulate what's going on here so that people can travel safely and not face injury or death.
For sure. And now, Greer, you're studying, if I'm not mistaken, complex litigation. And if I am right, in announcing your courses that you're studying, how does this tie all in? Just making this applicable to your field of study and such. Is there, just from what you know or what you studied, is there grounds for lawsuits against Delta or any of these other airlines that are taking place that you can speak on?
I definitely think so. And I think it's great that you brought that up. One of my classes this semester is complex litigation, which teaches students about the theory and practice of handling large-scale, multiple-party cases. And this includes class action cases. It includes multi-district litigation, which we call MDL. And it also includes joinder, which is when you join multiple parties into one case. So I definitely think that could be at play here with some of these airline or airplane issues where you have multiple um, people or parties suing an airline for the same thing or for the same incident or occurrence. And so I definitely think that my classes at law school kind of inform how I think about all of these issues. I'm in complex litigation, as you mentioned this semester, and that seems to be the most applicable class to this issue, I guess, that we're currently facing with um, just these continued incidents of airplanes malfunctioning or pilot error or something going on the runway. So I definitely think that plays into everything. And complex litigation in particular examines the procedural and the substantive part of these class actions or these cases involving multiple parties. So I think it would apply directly.
For sure, for sure. But we're gonna keep bringing up our Safe Skies initiative, which we will share on our social media platforms and such. And this is something that we are seriously doing. This isn't just for clicks and views. This is something that we actually want to breathe into existence because with each week shows, there's a need for it. Now, again, we're both men of faith, and we're going to pray that we have safe travels this weekend. You probably don't want to drive to New York, and I sure as heck ain't going to drive to Los Angeles. So this is the one, this is really kind of the one trip where I just can't really just say, okay, I'll drive to it. I can't do like I did with New Orleans here. Like I definitely have to fly to LA, and we're only going to keep on traveling as we get into the warmer months and such. And everybody else will be too for spring breaks, wedding seasons, graduations, summer vacations, spring vacations, conference season, gala season. So, we're no longer in that slow period where we can kind of just be flexible or people aren't traveling as much. Hospitality and the travel and leisure industries are going to start upticking. So therefore, these methods of travel and even on the road as well and on our boats and other ways have to be safe. But mainly because this is in the news, this is the predominant news story the past few weeks. We got to make sure our skies are safe. Um, but yes, we're going to move on from that and circle back later on. But we're going to go into more media news. Obviously, in the media landscape, there's been a couple of shakeups, if you want to call them shakeups. Joy Reid was fired, let go, contract not renewed. uh, Whatever the case may be, she's not going to be at MSNBC as of now going forward. And Lester Holt announced that he's going to be stepping down from the NBC Nightly News this summer. Um, and this follows really kind of a rash of media shakeups that have been taking place, including Jim Acosta being booted from his time slot on CNN to where he was going to be relegated to a midnight slot, which he just renounced and declined. Um, but yeah, Greer, what are your thoughts on the apparent media landscape shakeups? And the only reason why we're bringing this up because we are dealing with obviously a new administration with Trump and such. And there's a lot of theories out there that people who speak up or speak out against him are being ousted from basically their job. So let's agree just to share with your thoughts on, Joy Reid, Lester Holt, and justice media landscape as it relates to 2025.
Uh, whew, there's a lot there. I think we're living in really dangerous and quite scary times. And I don't mean that to scare people, but I mean that from the systemic and structural perspective of if you speak out against this white power structure, right, or the Trump power structure, it seems like you're being shut down. And I'm sure we'll talk about it maybe a little later, but you can see this in a very clear example with the Associated Press being kept out of the White House, and now the White House wanting to choose exactly which reporters report on what's going on in this country. But to answer your question directly about Joyanne Reid and even Lester Holt, these two staples in cable television, let me start with Joyanne Reid. I think she is an amazing person. She often speaks truth to power. She's a black woman. She was on MSNBC for those who may not know. And she had her last show, I believe it was Monday night, if I'm not mistaken, that she had her last show. And she, delivered as she always does and talked about the importance of how race plays into so many things in this country, how gender plays into so many things in this country, and how proud she was to have a show and to have a great staff and team behind her. And then some of the other MSNBC hosts, like Rachel Maddow and others, said that they were really shocked and upset at the fact that Joy Ann Reid's show is going to be canceled or whatever word you'd like to use. And so I do think that that is, I can't say it's super surprising. I've seen some of the moves that MSNBC has made over the past few months and years, and they've kind of been moving this direction, the CNN direction, I call it, where they want to do more moderate news and roundtable discussions where it just gets crazy. And so I guess jumping over to Lester Holt, I think that's very interesting too, because he's been around forever. I remember growing up watching him. He does NBC Nightly News for those who may not know. And to see that he's stepping away from that role is quite interesting. I don't know if it has anything to do with the current political scheme or Trump or anything like that. I don't know as much about that move, but it is something to really keep our eyes on. What is the national media landscape going to look like over these next 4 years, and how are people going to continue speaking truth to power? So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at it this way, Lester Holt is, he has been doing this for a very long time and not excusing really anything, but he's not getting any younger. We see the CBS Evening News recently change hands with some new hosts. This is not new. It's just probably the timing is a little off. It's probably coincidental, but I mean, if you just think about it, I would say Russell Holt is a Republican, at least last I checked. I mean, obviously, it's kind of the last of the dying breed of folks who don't really spew out their political views and ideology because everybody has an opinion nowadays. But as far as Joanne Reid goes, and such, I would just say this. I felt it was coming. I felt it was coming sooner rather than at some point, sooner rather than later. It happened with Tiffany Cross a few years ago. And this was under a Democratic president and under the leadership at MSNBC, under a black woman, Rashida Jones. Um, and it happened with Melissa Harris Perry going back almost 10 years ago now, where she had a Saturday morning news slot. I was a big fan of that, big supporter of that show. Really, really informative. She brought things from a sociological perspective as a basically a college professor. I think she still teaches at Wake Forest. I'm not sure about that, but I definitely miss her on the media airwaves and haven't seen her since, except for maybe just following her on Facebook. But she's not the voice that she once was. Um, so yeah, I'm not surprised with what MSNBC is doing. They're trying to follow CNN. But the thing is, everybody's becoming moderated except for Fox News. It seems like Fox News is becoming more conservative and such, but everybody else has to moderate except for Fox News. I mean, they even gave Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, who's the chairwoman of the RNC, her own show. The last I checked. So everybody is forced to moderate, except for Fox News. They can become more extreme. Uh, the former Fair and Balanced Network, quote unquote. But I was listening to Rowan Martin last night, and he was just talking about there's a need to continue to support black-owned media. You can even consider us black-owned media in this regard. My thoughts are this. Joy Reid can do exactly what we're doing or follow the Don Lemon trail. Of course, he was booted from CNN a couple years back. And I just hope that the same people who are on that Win with Black Women call, like myself the other night, the 10,000 on that Zoom call, I hope they support what she's doing, really support, and not just be a part of a moment. Because oftentimes we talk, you and I agree, that do more than just be in that moment, convert that into action. So I want all these folks who are upset, all these folks that are all those 10,000 people that joined in on that call, all those people sharing their social media insight, all social media that share their social media profiles that people like Latasha Brown did and Angela Rye posted that, everything else. I want everybody else to have the same energy if she were to come out with a new podcast next week. I don't want to, I'm just saying, I want to see that because we have to support black-owned media the same way we support everybody when they're on the mainstream platforms. Because reality is,
Right.
if you are a black talent or black voice, and you're on these mainstream platforms, you have a beginning date and an expiration date. Ain't nobody going to be there, especially this day and age with the way the media landscape is now. Not just because of who's in the White House, but just our media consuming habits. Nobody's going to be on cable television or network TV 20 years. The days of having Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, everybody on the nightly news for 10, 20 years, those days are gone. Lester Host, like I said, is a I don't want to say dying breed, but is an expiring breed. That's
Right.
the truth. So reality is that that goes with any platform. You're not going to get anybody hosting a TV show for 30 years like you had Johnny Carson on NBC back in the day. Those days are gone. Not even a good TV show lasts more than good 6 good seasons now. That's anywhere. Even what we're doing here, Greer, we hope that we do big and great things. But reality is, this is not going to look like this 5 years from now. Hopefully this metastasizes for us doing bigger, better things. But we're not going to be doing the same things that we're doing now in a few years. It's just not going to happen the way this media landscape is. So
Right.
we had to continue to support Black-owned media. We had to keep that in mind, and we cannot continue to just be validated by mainstream media because mainstream media these days is clearly what it is. And we have to just create our own platforms and we have to support our own platforms and not need to be validated by MSNBC or a CNN because they clearly have shown what direction they wanted to go over the last few years. So those are my feelings
Totally.
on that.
No, those are good thoughts. I do agree. Just a quick fact check, if you will. So Lester Holt was a Republican, but then he changed his party affiliation to independent in 2018. And this followed a presidential debate that he hosted where Donald Trump said that he was a Democrat, but actually he was a Republican at that time. Then after that comment, he changed to independent. So he's an independent now, but would assume that he still has some conservative or certainly
Right.
moderate leanings.
Right. Yeah, for sure, without question. Thank you for that fact check in real time. So we're just going to just continue on. We're going to talk about Elon Musk, the co-president. So recently, I think in the past 10 days, there was an email that was sent out to federal employees asking that all federal employees send a 5 bullet point email by I think it was this past Monday at midnight, justifying your jobs or else risk termination. And I don't know what was to become of that and all, but I felt that was for one pretty funny. And two, I wonder if anybody even actually responded that seriously. What are your thoughts on that, Greer?
I mean, it's just crazy. I understand the general notion, and that's what they do. President Obama called it the okey doke. Like, well, yeah, it makes sense. People should report on what they're doing at work, and somebody needs to know um, exactly what they're doing. But they already do that, right? People already report to their bosses and have to check in and deliver on certain benchmarks every week, right? If not every month. And so they're swooping in and doing all of this stuff that sounds like it could be right, but they're actually trying to usurp power from these people, federal employees who are hardworking people, by the way, on the back end. And so I think Elon Musk, the co-president, as you called him, really needs to take a step back. Jasmine Crockett really called him out yesterday, and we'll get into that later, but we can't even say the words that she used on air, but she said in very strong terms that he needs to really take a step back and let these people live, let these people work, let these people figure out what this new life looks like for them with the new administration. And so for him to ask for these bullet points or there will be a consequence. We even saw that Trump's own people, like Kash Patel, said Kash Patel is the new director of the FBI, for those who may not know, that we're not doing this. Like my employees don't have to do this because we have our own policies and procedures in place. And so Elon Musk, who was not confirmed by Senate, was not elected to that office by any American, is now trying to serve as this co-president and regulate every single federal agency. So I think it's completely ridiculous. And seems like Trump's own people aren't going for it now.
Yeah. Um, and there's even more stuff going on. Like there was a recent CPAC convention where Elon was presented with a chainsaw, and I don't know if it was real or it's a prop, but it sure looked real. He may have turned it on. I didn't really watch any of that, but it certainly made headlines and all. It was really metaphorical for how he is canceling and cutting every program, even now with the student loan forgiveness program that was so hard fought for these last several years and all, which people want to have selective memory that student loan pause happened under the Trump administration during COVID. We all know that. My thoughts on that are we all know that student loan debts was simply something that, or for forgiveness was certainly something that Republicans or conservatives were never on board with. So not surprised. So I mean, this is perfectly on brand. But the reality is that a lot of these individuals who voted for you or chose not to vote, period, this is what you get. These are the things that you get. Elections have consequences, as I say almost every week here. This is now, these are now one of the consequences of that. And I just hope people realize that sooner rather than later, that they can take action now and speak out. And there are special elections going on this year in Wisconsin, and obviously there's a mayoral campaign in New York and many other major cities, and there's a state legislator and governor's race in the Commonwealth of Virginia and New Jersey. So you have outlets to speak out civically and such. But just Greer, what are your thoughts on everything I had just talked about here?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are good points. I think my question with all of this would be back to our central theme or question, what are folks going to do about it? What are we going to do about these crazy unilateral decisions that Trump and Co-President Musk are making, like telling federal agencies what to do or wiping away programs that help so many people. SNAP benefits are being debated now by people on the right, and they're saying we really don't need that as a welfare form, but they're not really proposing an alternative. We can even go back a few weeks ago to this Gulf of Mexico changing to Gulf of America and Google going right along with it, and then Apple Maps going right along with it in this country. So, what are people going to do about this? I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I know it's more than talking. And so it'll be interesting to see over these next 3, 4 years how people respond and really engage with this political system as we know it, or if anything changes. I mean, we haven't had a really large protest in a while. So will that happen at some point soon? Does that really make a difference these days, or do we need more direct action and direct communication with legislators? Do legislators even listen to their constituents these days, or do they just make up their own mind about everything? I think these are questions that we really need to ask, and we really need to start acting upon. And so I think your thoughts are spot on, and it's just again, it's quite scary and kind of wild to witness in real time what's happening at the federal government level, in particular with Elon Musk and Trump.
Absolutely, for sure. And even one of our favorite topics, DEI, and the blowback with that, and with the Fortune 500 companies backtracking on that and such. I mean, you have now just many more of companies saying are you going to stay on with DEI or not. But just from a complex litigation aspect, there could be potential lawsuits from employees claiming discrimination, such as reverse discrimination claims versus diversity protections. Just from your complex litigation standpoint, aspect Greer, would you say are companies legally vulnerable for removing DEI programs after committing to them? If you could speak to that on anything that you know of or have learned within the complex litigation aspect as it relates to the DEI blowback.
Sure, and this also kind of weaves its way into employment law generally as well. Um, I don't know. I really don't know if there are any legal repercussions that will come from these DEI rollbacks. I mean, firing people and not giving them a reason when their contract says that they can only be fired for a reason, that might be an issue. But getting rid of DEI programs, I know there are law school students who have had their internships rescinded this summer because they're part of a DEI program. I don't think there are any legal repercussions there for the employer. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody feel free to fact check me, but I'm not aware. A lot of times companies or at least employers have wide latitude, a wide range of decision-making authority. And so to say we don't want this program, just think about it this way, Clay. I mean, these companies didn't have these programs before George Floyd, a lot of them, and they were just something that was created or that were created. So for them to say, no, we don't really need these anymore, while it is a slap in the face to black folks and marginalized people in this country, I'm not really sure there's much we can do about it. But you're right, there are companies that have not followed through on their pledges that they made after George Floyd's death. Those are companies like Walmart and McDonald's and Target, and there are long lists on the internet you can find. It's actually was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said they've been able to notice there's been a noticeable increase of customers at the local Costco because Costco said that they are committed to DEI and they do value employees and customers of all backgrounds. And so I think the way that we're going to see consequences here is going to be in the form of the dollars that people spend at pro DEI businesses and the dollars that they do not spend at anti DEI businesses like Target and the like. And so, in terms of legal repercussions, again, beyond the just basic wrongful termination claims, I'm not sure there's much that can be done about these DEI programs that, like I said, were created kind of out of the blue in the first place. They haven't been around the whole time the company's been around, so I'm not sure there's much employees or potential employees can do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, John Hope Bryant said this the other night on social media. He said, "All with all this talk of DEI, at the end of the day, you have to DIY, do it yourself." And it's sounded kind of bootstrappy, but reality is at the end of the day, you have to do it yourself. I've been vocal about my critiques of DEI, and I completely co-sign to that. At the end of the day, it's up to you basically to make it happen out there in this world, and it's especially as a professional, and we can't always rely on who's in office or what's in place or what's not in place. My grandfather once told me it doesn't matter who's the president of the United States or the governors and the mayors and such. You still have a family to take care of and you still have bills to pay. I know a lot of political parties don't want to hear that, but that's just the truth when it comes to that. But just moving forward along, it is about tax time. Well, it is tax time season now. And there recently has been a report that Elon Musk has access, or Doge has access to a bunch of people's like your and I's social security numbers. They can access our tax files and such. And we all know that Trump has been touting removing or eliminating the IRS in some capacity, one way, shape, or form. But I would just say that, look, there's a lot of data privacy concerns regarding that, legal concerns and security breaches, and this can be mishandled simply just by a third party access. I mean, what rights do Americans have if their tax info is compromised? So just your thoughts on that, Greer, or even with the my previous thoughts on DEI before we transitioned over.
Yeah. I know we're here at 5 minutes to go. I do think this is an important topic for us to address, and that is the data and security privacy concerns, especially in this digital age, as you and I talk about a lot as digital media creators. We're supporters of content creators who use their platform to inform or to entertain, to uplift others. And so I think when you talk about stealing people's data or using people's data against them, as it seems like Elon Musk and I guess at the behest of Donald Trump is doing. It is very, again, scary, and I don't think it is right. Whether or not it's legal is another question because the government has a lot of our information already, and not only the government, but private companies use our information against us all the time. We're often agreeing to give this information away, and we don't even know it. Now, it's a little different with the government because, especially even going back to American Revolution times, we don't want the government to spy on us, to invade our space and invade our privacy. However, at the same time, we do want the government to help us and to work for us and to be innovative. And so there's a fine line there. And it does seem like Elon Musk is crossing that line again at the behest of Donald Trump. On your general DEI points. I agree with you. I think DEI as a concept has been misused and weaponized, almost like the word woke has been. And so people don't really know what it means. And I'm not saying it needs to die, but I'm saying that we need to understand that the foundations of DEI are really what matters, not really what it's called. And not only are the foundations important, but how it materializes is important too. Is it really helping marginalized folks, or is it only helping white women, as so many of these programs do, going back to affirmative action? So I agree with you. You just might have to do it yourself for a little while here. And when we say do it yourself, to your point about bootstrapping, I don't think we're saying, oh, just go out there and burn yourself out and burn yourself all the way out, but it means also working with your community and coming up with ways to support other people in your position. And so I do think you're spot on with that. But I'll let you close us out here with 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Greg, I couldn't agree anymore. But we're going to wrap this up and such, and just t briefly touch on the Safe Skies Initiative. So, I'll be dropping in our social media platforms again today and the rest of this week about how you could support this. This will include addresses to the FAA offices, the NTSB offices, and just about how we could make this a realistic movement that goes beyond just a moment. But that's all the time we have here today. Thank you to my co-host Greer for your time, and we will do this again next week. And we have a lot to talk about. We're talk about the Oscars, arts and entertainment, especially in this age of the rise of the creator economy, which I would like to explore in any complex litigation angles surrounding that. Obviously, I'm sure we'll have more Trump and Elon stories to share. It'd be nice if we could talk about JD Vance for once. I mean, I kid there, but that just shows you how non-existent he is. And I just hope and pray, that we are not talking about any aviation incidents next week. But that does not mean that the Safe Skies initiatives will go away. If anything, it's just going to continue because even when things are good, you pray, just like when things are bad, you pray. So thank you again today. If you have any closing thoughts, these 5 seconds, Greer, have at it. And we'll see you all next week.
See you all next week. I think you hit on everything. Safe travels this weekend.
You too, my friend. You have a good one.
Thanks. Take care. See you, everybody.